he went ninth. We both hit like perfect 30s, and like after that night, he just came to me like, dude, you're good. And I was like, damn, you're more excited than me. Like he was in my face with it. Like, it was just so dope, man. Like, he always had this positive energy about him, and just driving here, like the brewery across the street, that's where we had our last meal before the last slam we had in here. I think we had like both like some spicy ass ribs. You know, he could take it out. My spice now is like, nah. So, Aunt Black, so last thing was, Aunt can attest to this. We were at a slam at La Paloma. I kind of got into it with somebody, and yeah. Joe and Aunt Black, like their energy, like kept me from like really doing something, going to jail. I had like 2 months to go before I retired out of the military, and I was like, I cannot fuck this up. So Joe and Aunt Black, Aunt, you're here. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. So yeah, I'm kind of a crazy asshole sometimes. My dear friend Joe Lima died on September 2nd, 2023. He was a member of 3 San Diego Slam teams that placed top 10 nationally. He was featured on All Deaf Poetry 3 times. He was a 3-time Long Beach Slam champion. He obtained 2 degrees from 2 universities. He was a college professor, and probably the most interesting fact of all, he's from West Virginia. Now ask yourselves, who in the good fuck do you know from West Virginia? Days after he died, I noticed that the views on his YouTube videos went up, and it got me thinking back to my childhood as I sat in the funeral home with my mortician father, how families would turn up for people who couldn't talk back anymore, people who couldn't join the party and ask, hey, I'm finna run to the store, do y'all need anything? See, it's amazing. They say dead men get better promotion. Hence why funeral programs are designed as club flyers with the best photos of the greatest moments, because one last spectacle is always needed. Some families even charge at the door because GoFundMes have replaced life insurance, and Cash App might as well be a fucking donation box. Did you notice that the person in the box is always the flyest person in the room without the ability to look in the mirror and say, damn, I fucking look good? The pews are filled with hundreds of people, with at least 25% there just to make sure your ass never wakes up again, 25% who genuinely cared, 25% who just want to say I was there, and the other 25% want to say sorry for some shit they should have apologized for when you were breathing. Why do we ignore people's words and feelings until their obituary becomes the saddest poem you didn't want read out loud? How come an open casket gets every bit of emotion, but an open mouth only gets snaps, or 8.7? Or maybe a 9.5. Yeah, everyone gives you a 10 when you're lowered into the ground along with your flowers, the same ones they didn't tend in the garden when you were in their presence. Did you know that the average human is only 5'4", and most graves are dug at 8 feet? So that tells me that even when you are dead, you still have room to grow, because we are now nothing more than a seed watered by tears from people whose low-key main concern is what are they cooking at the repast. A headstone's average weight is 86 pounds, but the burden of regret and missed opportunity is much heavier. Graveyards are the biggest collection of talent, and poets, we are simply the headliners. The average cost of a funeral is $9,500, but a life well lived like Joe is fucking priceless. So know that while a poet is alive, we recite our eulogies into mics, because we'll be damned if we receive praise when we're stiff. We're not counting on judges to bury our words on a 10 scale, because poets, we are naturally imbalanced. You see, they say a man dies 2 deaths, one in the physical, and the last one, no one else mentions his name. So say mine's Joe. Say his, Joe. We are not your average Joes. Would you like a cup of Joe? Because coffee contains about 80 to 100 milligrams of caffeine. Eat it, Joes. Sloppy Joes. Joe Cool. Joe Boxer. I mean, what's the power in the name if that person is already dead? Life.
I've met Joe about a year ago, and I saw him perform, and it really inspired me. And we had this great conversation about what poetry meant to both of us. And throughout this conversation, I realized this man was going to be one of my most important role models that I will ever meet. He showed me that I, as an Asian man, can pursue art And one thing that we bonded very briefly over, but we had this special connection, is that we both have a background in law. I'm an attorney, and we kind of geeked out over the Constitution and the First Amendment. And I just remember one time when I performed a piece and he told me, you know what, Edu? I kind of see my younger self in you. I'm like, well, that's not fair. You can't give me all those high expectations. But speaking of expectations, he showed me that as an Asian man, I can be a poet, I can be an attorney, and I can be a professor. And those three things were some things that I wanted to do in my life. And he showed me that my dream was achievable, that my goals are realistic, and that I can do this because he's already paved the road for me. So this poem I'm going to be performing is dedicated to him. It's about creativity and what it means to be creative and how that we need to nurture that. And that's part of the reason that is so important, is because it is our life. So this one's called Inland Empire. Forgotten are the spirits of nature embedded in what surrounds the peripherals of our perception. Their voices drowned out by noise that blind their touch, leaving them shapeless. What were once beings of pure life energy, they decayed to fragments of hardened dust of the stars that they're made of. The remnants of time and fading memories forgone keep these beings barely alive. They no longer thrive in the cloudy smoke of the hustle and bustle in our bodies. They survive on the off chances of those times when we venture forth beyond the clouds, greeting them and bringing gifts of labor and love. The quiet loss of these beings fall on the dead years with a whimper. A cry for help we muted silent by the loud and obnoxious voices pulling us in all directions. It is only through tragedy we dive into the murky waters we place ourselves in. When we find ourselves with a noose on the neck, our own tie so horrific but so vivid, a friend whom we betrayed who only want to talk to us and make something beautiful together. The body is an island that houses a temple of the sacred where thoughts become solid as stone, propelling our dreams into reality. At the center of all is a pedestal where we once placed our mind and our soul. It is now fractured, split in the middle to smaller pieces on this broken altar. A dwindling flame struggles to burn where our passion can only stay afloat on the top of the wellspring of imagination, emotion, and foreboding. Where has that flame gone? We no longer grope our way through invisible dimensions of reality. We no longer gain insight into that which sight can't see. We no longer engage in our conversation with ourselves and the norm and what's beyond the veil. We become void with imagination and character. We become empty. How do we expect to change ourselves? How do we expect to express ourselves? And how do we expect to love ourselves when we don't have that fire within us? How do we expect to love the world? How do we expect to express to the world? And how do we expect to even change the world when we're only ashes and cinders? We must strive to heal and mend these beings within and around us, to rekindle the flame, put back the pedestal together, and reclaim that altar so that one time we can light ourselves again. We have to clean our rooms, rendezvous with our mind, listen to our hunches and gut feelings, grasp the supernatural, explore the confines of our creativity. And most importantly, don't forget to dream. Dream in this waking life. Create in this waking life. It is our temple where we find ourselves and the world. Imagination is the key to life. How else can we open the door and shape the cosmos? Thank you.
Judges, scores up. The Poetry Slam folks will get that one. All right, so we have a few more people up to the mic. Is the intermission after these three or no? Never mind, I'll ask you after. Okay, please give it up for Steady, Mark, Sid, and Chai.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie. Hi everyone, my name is Eddie. And together we are Steady. We met Joe 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think 2012.
Maybe we were organizing a slam in LA, and it was a Filipino slam.
Yeah.
And our friend, it's an invitation. We were looking for Filipino poets, and our friend Mark said, if you're gonna do a Filipino slam, you gotta have Joe Liver there.
Got to. Yeah.
And so we invited him,
Mm-hmm.
and to everyone's shock, he did not win.
First year.
First year.
Yeah,
But we've done that slam now 8 years, and he's won 3 of them.
Yeah, he's the only 3-time champion of it.
Yeah.
We're running for about our 7 years now.
Yeah.
And when we first started as a festival Filipino arts and culture, and then after that we continued in Historic Filipinotown. And like with Joe, like he represents San Diego like so hard, right? You would think he lived right down the street in Hi-Fi in Echo Park, LA. Like there'd be times at the open mic, that we both run, I would see him in the audience, and I would think like, oh, is he gonna sign up or anything like that, And afterwards, they'd be like, hey, Joe, you didn't want to sign up? And then he'd be like, oh, no, Eddie, like, Sunny Jump, like, this is, like, my safe space. Like, I'm just here to support y'all. I'm just here to hear the stories. And that's what, Joe was really about, just, like, being in community and just in the love of poetry and spoken word.
Really, truly the most humble spirit I've ever come across.
Yeah.
He was always about giving everything he had. And so we decided to share this piece about home because Joe sort of like, he made, wherever he was, he made that feel like home. 20 times it feels like home. 1.
When nothing ever feels like this.
I need this.
This moment is an oxygen mask in a world crashing down with borders, walls, and executive orders.
Remember to breathe, then we can help each other.
2. When all else fails, we can black box. We are alive, we will make it out okay. We are alive, we will make it out okay.
3. When one way or another, we'll throw it back and
TLC that life is less of a scrub nowadays because we're sticking to rivers and lakes that we're used to. 4 or 5. When Los Angeles is a conversation of freeways.
6.
When our journeys cross like hugs with consent.
When a handshake turns into a tilt to the familiar, turns into discovering you grew up in the same town and went to the same high school. 7.
When asking,
how are you,
is not an automated voicemail. We are not meant to be telemarketer messages left after the beep.
We are more.
We are endless chismis with best friends and unlimited data. Let's keep talking.
8.
When all provinces rise to revolution and prove that our resistance is more DNA than Ancestry.com. 9.
When time flies and we dance like family reunions without closet skeletons or that
cackling auntie who had one too many. 10.
When poetry is a language I am still learning.
When I can understand more than I can speak it.
And through it all, you know what I'm trying to say anyway. 11. When understanding that a relationship doesn't work if neither side wants to change, that at the end of the day,
partnership is about love
and everything else is rhetoric.
12.
When finding purpose means
asking questions,
learning from mistakes,
and figuring out what makes you feel whole.
13.
When luck has nothing to do with it. 14, 15, and 16. When our parents laughed at us, we thought we were so smart, but they were once this age too. 17, almost adults.
18, thinking we're adults.
19,
when an
open space
does not mean
empty space. 20, when another milestone is to be celebrated. When growing means challenging, means building, means fighting, means listening, means learning, means crying, means shouldering, means breaking, means solving, means falling, means accepting, means moving, means crashing, means trying, means writing. When the number of times this feels like home will always be 1, we don't mind losing count. We are also streaming live. So we have folks from West Virginia, New York, and Hawaii. So right now, it's all love to Joe.
Hi, everyone. So Antonio from the Definitive Soapbox wanted me to mention that Joe won the Long Beach Poetry Slam 2 years in a row. And if I remember correctly, the year afterwards, they asked, hey, can you be a sack poet? And he was like, yeah, sure. And honestly, that's kind of around the same time I met him. I was just getting to soapbox. And also, 2019, that was the first time I did the Long Beach Poetry Slam, and by which I mean the first time I ever slammed. And so me and Christian and Jonathan drove down here to San Diego from LA. And that was the first time I ever got coached for slam by him. And, you know, him and I didn't know each other very well, but like this was the first kind of like mentorship style experience I had when it came to poetry. And also, it wasn't just, you know, he gave me like so many interesting, like, you know, so much food for thought. Like, specifically, I had a hard time writing any sort of positive poems at that time. And poems about myself. I would deliberately leave myself out of poems, and he told me, yeah, no, the audience wants to hear more about you. And that was like the precursor to me actually writing a positive poem. So I'm going to read that. When the kind people tell you it's okay to not be okay, what they mean is it's okay to go crazy. It's okay for thunder to follow after lightning. It's okay for an avalanche to answer a thunderclap. It's not okay for the town below to be buried by the snow, but it's okay if the town couldn't move out of the way. It's okay if your organs and psyche to be shaken by cold snaps, heat waves, mosquito bites, and your epigenetic inheritance of depression-related phenotypes. It's okay if mimicking the way that others ignored your abuse and neglect never worked out as well for you as it did for them. It's not okay that everyone around you believes humans have a hypothalamus, a pituitary gland, and 2 adrenal glands, and yet your emotional problems are all in your head. It's not okay that they speak as though you put them there yourself. It's not okay that they mocked you for wallowing in self-pity for years, then yell at you now for keeping your feelings bottled up inside. It's okay to burn out. It's okay to collapse under your own weight. It's okay to go supernova, deep within the lightless void between galaxies out in the boonies of the universe. This is a well-documented phenomenon that some stars go through, and this is what the kind people mean when they say you're a star. They mean you are brilliant. When they call you bright, they mean that you are a luminous fusion reactor hurtling through the benighted cosmos, and the Stygian darkness of the heavens shrinks at your passage. You emanate electromagnetism, and the serried ranks of primordial shadows run away screaming as piss streams down their legs, for they cannot withstand your radiance. So when I say I hope I get to see you shine someday, what I mean is, in the unfathomably infinitesimal pinprick of the observable universe, I wish I'll discover there's a little less dark matter out there, and a few more signs of life than previous examinations led me to believe, and you are my favorite anomaly. You are the enigmatic celestial phenomenon proving all my prior theories about life, the universe, and everything were extrapolated from a deficient data set. So forgive yourself for being finite, for not violating the laws of thermodynamics without breaking a sweat, for missing the half-court buzzer shot when the state championship was 2 points away, for not being born into this world after attaining enlightenment in the womb, because no, you shouldn't have known better. You should have been shown you could expect better. You should have been shown you deserved better, but you weren't, and that's what's wrong, not you. Because if you really did have it as easy as I swear you did, then this poem would be light as a feather, a whisper in the wind, as delicately prim and proper as a crustless cucumber sandwich served with a porcelain cup of Darjeeling tea after one second constitutional on the veranda in their Sunday best, but it's not. And you're not. You are a strange new bloom amongst the wildflower meadows of resilience despite thunderstorms and avalanches and astronomical indifference, sticking out like the sore-thumbed supernova that you are, and this is precisely why I love you. Thank you.
I met Joe at Sunday Jump and followed through with Definitive Soapbox, Palms Up, and the Gold Standard at the Greenway Court Theater. Now, I don't remember our last conversation, not because he wasn't memorable, but because I'm just forgetful. But they say it's not the words you remember, but the feelings. And I remember the sound I'd make from listening to the lines he baked, like, like muffins. But I still remember the sound of his laughter after landing my jokes. And from watching him, I learned that some of the most powerfulest beings in the universe are bald men. Johnny Sims taught us that you could be whoever you dream to be. An astronaut, a firefighter, a doctor, or a plumber. See, when the times get hard, he goes in harder, penetrating through all obstacles. No challenge he couldn't overcome, no load he couldn't handle. Mr. Clean The man of your dreams, no future shining brighter than his bald. No patch of dirt, stain, crumb he can rub out. Built like the rock, he can spot you. Put you on your core, make you spotless. Saitama taught us that your final form was just existing. No 10-episode supercharged yelling. No need for golden hair power over 9,000. I'm just super saying that even the extraordinary can come in the ordinary. But there's no better teacher than Joe Limer. See, he showed us you could do it all. As an ancient man, he can stand tall as a poet and a mentor, a lawyer and a community pillar. He ain't no porn star, but he's an all-star that can smash mouths. You know, he didn't need to be an actor because he was like a truck, because he was for real. He may seem meek when you meet, but that don't make him weak when he's spinning on the mic. Smashing quicks to the ground, he got that stereo surround sound in the timbre of his voice. See, he didn't need the beef, but he was prime choice. He can blow you away the way he can bend the elements, like with the element of surprise. Because when you hear him speak, you know it's all rise. He was a true air nomad. No lad's been in his shoes. His soul's treaded farther than the average. Damn, what did I write here? Don't need no caffeine when you got a cup of Joe to flow like a savage. With palms up, he is gold standard. Built on a Sunday, had us jump to our feet. Undefeated, he was Mr. Clean in his style. Three-course slam champ to make San Diego wild. His mind holds a universe that nobody converses. His conversations have an incrementation in your verses. Had my ears wide open, blood pumping without the cardio. Because make no mistake, his existence was no typo. He universally donated his soul, bled history on stage to cry and rage. See, I may punch lines with my one-liners, but he hits hard with heavy Joe liners. He got the flow in his fire that can make your face melt. He dropped bars that hit so hard, they hit harder than my grandpa's belt. He was authentic in his work, like uncooked pork, he was raw, dog. He taught me to embrace my silly, reminding me to keep art fun with these down bad puns. He inspired me to be a better writer, to uplift spirits, joy, and laughter. And as his spirits lift up higher into the heavens, because Joe Limer, we could look up and see that the night sky will shine brighter.
Thank you to all the poets that have touched the stage. They did not represent myself, Queen Bees, or any organizers of this event. We have 3 more people coming to the stage. Please give it up for Lady Bosco, Super B, and Chris Clements.
I was in the car with my kids and Shihan's youngest, Aurora Blessing, Phoenix Rising, and Ever. I asked them, what is life? According to them, life is loving, art, adventure, experiences. Mortality is a beast to reckon with. This everyday living invincibly in trauma, pulling sips of joy out of empty pockets, lucky to be clothed at all, checking tips of healing to the winds of another day's fall, because of course, there's always another day, until there's not another day. And the luxury of breath is suddenly threatened, suddenly reminded, every second counts. You know, the average person can hold their breath for 60 seconds before their organs begin to shut down. It's an odd thing to be left here in this simulation with our myriad of realities, our varying beliefs, this culture that values the shape of our bodies, the color of our skin, our net worth, the metrics of being human, the metrics to exist. It is hard to make sense out of how much time one gets here. Why some get more and some leave too soon. Why we don't just get to live forever. It's hard to make sense out of what we're all doing here. The bills, the laundry, the job, the lack of, the hustle, the broken heart, the self-doubt, the get up, the knockdown, the everydays every day. I think the kids were right about this life thing. Loving, art, adventure, experiences. Joe was that sip of joy out of an empty pocket. Ever share a loud smile with him? Joe was life's luxury of breath done right. Ever hear one of his meticulously crafted poems? Joe was a meter of humanity who connected us to each other. His Asian boy poem speaking universally to all who ever felt wronged, who connected us to ourselves. And that's the point in which I typically feel the swell of emotion in myself. Joe was every second counts, especially at slams that I had the honor to host him in, because as y'all know, in slams, every second counts. Joe is a blessing, rising forever. Thank you.
What up, family? How we doing? Hey. I got emotional back there because I know Joe would really love this, you know? I met Joe at National Poetry Slam the year they had it in Minnesota. And I was about to get on stage, and this cute little bald Filipino dude grabbed my arm and was like, "Good luck." And I was like, "Thank you. Where are you slamming? Where are you from?" And he goes, "San Diego." And I go, I was really familiar with the San Diego team. And I go, "Did you drive up with them?" And he goes, "No, I came up by myself. I think he came with his cousin." And I was like, "That's crazy." That's like, and then I should have known then he's gonna be a problem. You know what I mean? Like he was gonna, like that's Joe. Like you fly across the nation to watch Poetry Slam. And on my way up here, it took me an hour and 45 minutes to get here today. And I was thinking about a way to describe what he meant to me. And I came up with a metaphor. It's like, have you ever had a beater car, just a shit car? And like for me, it was an early 2000 Dodge Neon, and it was like paint scraped off, no hubcaps. Like when it rained, it flooded in the back, and so that was gross enough. But when it got hot again, the moisture came up and like fogged my whole shit, and then smelled like wet carpet in there. And I remember like later going to my friend's house, and like I complained about it, and he goes like, "That's like my dream car. Shut up," like that. And that's the best way I could think of that Joe saw my poetry, you know, like. He saw something and coveted something in my poetry that I didn't even see in it. You know, like he was like able to like tell me like that's what I want, and it made me appreciate my thing. You know, like and it was just this weird thing that he did for me all the time. Like he saw me, you know, like really saw me, which is like rare that someone could like see who you are, like see, you know. And I wrote this poem called like On the Day Before I Die, and he liked it so much he would like teach that in his class. He would do that prompt and tell the students to write that. And so I wrote a sequel to that called The Day After I Die. And it says, "The day after I die, I will find you, friend. Even if we were just orbs, I'd recognize your energy, bro, easy. You'll probably be teaching a class on cloud making, leading debates between the wind and the sun, and how the one most resembles God, and you would win every time. On the day after I die, we'd write, tag poems on planets, and sign our name on anything that moved, like train yard graffiti artists on stars. Queen bees would know we were still alive and well on nights clear enough to see meteors drop like paper balls in office trash cans. On the day after I died, I challenge you to a race, back to our first convo in Minnesota, I was getting ready to perform, and you sitting at a bar, a student of words and stage, untapped power. I'm sorry I didn't see the electricity in you then, but I imagine Edison sat in light storms before flying kites. They're giants trying on shoes inside of you, waiting to step inside of Joe, and when we witnessed this power, we were enamored. On the day after I die, I'd introduce you to my Lola and Deutsch and Tita May and Joy and Warren and ask them to show me how eternity spends summer on afternoons on rooftops. I'd ask God if I could send us back, Joe, but this time new bodies, new names, and talents, and see if I'd still find you studying a craft and me jumping in way too early. I'd hope our new art is something abstract like skydive and skywriting. I want to start over and watch you geek out about velocity and talk about the pioneers of the sport, about the chemicals in the paint clouds and how to optimize its longevity. Nobody will know more than you, and nobody will ever know that, because you never made anyone feel like they didn't know or belong, like they weren't part of this thesis you created. That was your superpower, Professor X. The rest of us didn't know you built all of this in your mind. That's what made you a genius. That's what made you Joe. Rest in God's peace and power. I love you. Till the next hang.
Hi, everybody. I've known Joe for quite some time. In fact, I first met him as a student at Palomar College, the fall of 2001. I was in his first ever class. I had him for political science 100, 101, and 102. This man was amazing. He is the reason why I'm actually standing up here today, not because of the unfortunate events, but because I couldn't do any type of public speaking. I was terrified of it. But he showed me the power of words. Many of you know the power of words through poetry. I learned the power of words through debate. I got a raw Joe. Many of you know a diplomatic, statesman, polished Joe. I got the lawyer Joe. I got the Joe that knew the Constitution upside and down. I got the Joe that would literally walk in, eviscerate you, then watch you bleed out and point. I love that. His teaching turned into friendship. That friendship turned into mentorship. That mentorship turned into my brother. He was there for many of the great choices I made for over half my life. And he was there for some questionable ones too. Many of those he either inspired, instigated, or enabled. I went to Austin, Texas with Joe for lunch for 4 days. I went to Seattle on a road trip with him. I've gone to Vegas. I was there with him when he cheated on his girlfriend. Not in the sense that you might be thinking, no. You see, his girlfriend is a vegetarian. And after 4 days of being with his love for 4 days, he was jonesing. And this is a man who picked me up and said, I got to get something to eat. I'm like, okay, well, sounds good. He's like, I got to hiccup Mickey D's. I'm like, what is wrong with you? I knew we were poor. I was a substitute teacher. He was an adjunct professor. He didn't have a lot of money. You want Mickey D's? All right, sure, whatever. I've never seen a man look at a double quarter pounder of cheese like the cow being sent into the raptor pit in Jurassic Park. He eviscerated this thing. What he did in that car with that burger is illegal in most states. It has to be. This is the Joe that I knew. When he started going into poetry, he started talking about it, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Poetry, okay. Roses are red, violets are red. He's like, no, you seen like that Deaf Poetry Jam? I'm like, oh, on HBO. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, what of it? He wanted to get into it. I'm like, cool, go for it. He would come over to my house, and we would end up playing video games. Friday night, all day Saturday, and he would leave to go back Sunday afternoon. In that time, he was trying to bring me into the poetry world. He'd be outside spitting phrases, lyrics, writing stuff down, running it by me like my 2 cents actually meant anything. He drugged me up to Hollywood multiple times. San Diego. He talked about the Minnesota trips. He brought me to West Virginia to watch one of the football games that we saw. I was there 6 times with that man. He knows his college football. He knows that area. But he drove me to Pittsburgh to go to a slam that he didn't even perform at. He just wanted to check out the competition. He wanted to see what they were doing. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's go to Pittsburgh. He's tried so hard to get me into poetry. And I was like, it's okay. Because of him, I became a coach. Because of him, I became a high school social studies teacher. He was there when I got my first job. He was there when I got married. He was the best man at my wedding. He was there at the hospital the night my daughter was born. He was the first non-blood relative to hold my child. My kids call him Uncle Joe. And with our relationship being what it is, he thought it was hilarious to introduce Star Wars to my children by giving them 2 toys that they would fight over. And he loved that dynamic. I know so many things about Joe. He was a very compartmentalized person. He kept a lot of things tight to the vest. There was a lot of things that I didn't know about my best friend, my brother, the guy that influenced and changed my life. Some of you may be surprised to know this. His favorite sound in the world was a grill that's about to have meat put on it. I would have to announce to him, I'm putting stuff on the grill, and it didn't matter where he was, playing video games, in the bathroom. It didn't matter. He was going to come running. And all I would do is just put the chicken or steak or whatever it was on the grill. This is a man that was like, I love that sound. Can we make it bigger? Well, we created Noah's Ark. Chicken, beef, different types of pork, shrimp, seafood, all on the grill simultaneously. I became a fantastic barbecuer because he didn't know how to do any of it. This is a man who would bring his poetry out in the most inappropriate places. See, we would come down here to many establishments for libations, especially when they had trivia nights. And what was fantastic about those is sometimes if you won those, you would get a little extra money on the side. You know how many times that I went to a trivia night with him and we ended up not having to pay for drinks? It was fantastic. It was a lot of times. I introduced him to wine. I actually took him up to Temecula. And I'll leave you with this. This man got a glass of wine that he did not like after he's had a number of glasses of wine. And he's feeling pretty good, not really thinking, and starts to critique said wine in front of the owner and the winemaker. And I'm like, dude, time and a place. No. This particular, it has a bouquet and a taste of like sweaty socks. No, like sweat. Okay, so this is sweat, all right. No, it's more than that. This is like the sweat from like the Kraken. This is Kraken sweat, do you say? Like this is a mythical sea creature sweat. Yes, this is sea Kraken. See, this is the sweat of the Kraken. But it's more. It's like the sweaty balls of the Kraken. Yes, this is the ball sweat of the Kraken. They should just call this Kraken balls. And he would continue to roll. Other women are now hearing this going, I don't think I want that. And I'm like, dude, I am a member here. They're going to kill that. And he would keep rolling. These are the things that I loved about Joe. These are the things that inspire me to be better. And as I was writing these things out, trying to think, what would I say? How do I even begin to talk about my best friend? How do I close the book on what he has meant to me? And I realized this last Thursday that I couldn't. See, my niece is a high school senior, and she's taking civics. And I'm like, hey, I'm a civics teacher. Let me help you out. And she talked about, well, I don't understand this aspect of the Commerce Clause. You've heard of that. So I go, Article 1, Section 8, subparagraph 4, and I go right into it. And I'm like, that's it. I cannot close the book on Joe. He's in me. My teaching style, the way I coach, the way that I view the world, it's through that lens that he has built. Watching football, it's through that lens. Watching Star Wars, it's through that lens. My friend may not be physically in the room, but he is in the room. I am what he has created. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear some words from Joe's mother, Miss Leonella Limer. Please give it up for her.
Thank you so much for all those beautiful words that you have said in this room. I'm so amazed. You never know that you would raise a child who would come out to be beautiful as God would want it to be. And I'm so happy that you made it here today. And I would say good afternoon, and thank you for joining us to celebrate his life, my only son. I know it's hurting, it is sad, but I have to go on and just kind of remind myself, so many people he had impacted. And thank you, Kat, for that. I wanted to cut short because I know everybody wanted to say something. Thank you so much. For 49 years, he grew up to be a man of courage, stature, vision, and wisdom. He had a vision. He had big dreams, to dream big dreams to become a reality. And that he became a pillar of the community. He believed that without a vision, people perished. He hardly rebelled when he was growing up. We would move from place to place being a military dependent, but he wanted to cooperate with you, willing to do the right thing. That's how he was growing up. He was strong in facing the challenges in life. He was pressed on all sides, but not crushed. That's how he was. He had a very fighting spirit. I'm trying to recollect the last year, a year before he got sick. He's full of surprises. We traveled to the East Coast on a first class, and that was my first. He didn't tell me. I was only surprised when we were going to the first class. And then we traveled to Arizona to visit a cousin, to Las Vegas, to visit a family. Unbeknownst to me, these were his plans. On Mother's Day, he brought me to Carlsbad Field of Flowers. He knows that I love flowers. He loved to spend time together with me. And I love those moments. And on my birthday, he would ask me, Mom, where would you like to eat? He loves food, just like everybody have said, Chris have said. And he always tried to tell me, challenge me, hey, you better try this new food and go to different places. So I said, okay. I didn't realize that was my last Mother's Day, spent time with him, my last trip on a first class. I didn't realize that, we celebrated his birthday together, my daughter, Cindy, and him. Yes, I always try to tell myself, always treat the day your last day. You never know when God calls you. So I took every moment and even spending together, even the last day of his life, just to spend time together, even just sitting and not saying anything. His presence meant a lot to me. I can only think of the good memories, no negative memories. And I thank you for all the good words, just like what I have said. I couldn't thank you enough. I would like to thank first God. He had given me an opportunity to raise a child, to become his child. And I cherish that. Secondly, I would like to thank my family, Cindy, Aaron, Tori, and Trevor, who have always there for him. To the aunties, the uncles, the cousins, special mention to his auntie, Chona and Vicky, who were monitoring his progress. And also, Chita, my cousin, and Ida, who have visited him. My other sisters, like Lulu in Canada, which I am going to read a poem that she wrote for Joseph. She cannot make it today. The other people, Madison, who stayed with us for a while to help us, and Mark, who visited him, and also my brother, who traveled from Hawaii to be in his funeral, and Lydia. They were all in prayers for him. And outside of the family, special thanks to Miko, who moved from LA to live with us to take care of him. He became his social media person because his hands were frozen and cannot move and cannot walk. So Miko sacrificed moving here to take care of my son. Along with Rudy, special mention to Rudy for being a mentor to him at an early years of his poetry. He always talk about him, and so continued to communicate during those difficult times. Miko and Rudy together, they coordinated this event. And I thank you so much for that. Some friends, like faculties of the Palomar College, I can see there's only one who is present because Bill is sick. Bill stood with him during those difficult times. He brought him to the hospital, from the doctor's office to the hospital to the rehab, and come home and the same routine to the emergency room, to the hospital, to the rehab, and come home. And just like what I have said, he hated the hospital. He hated the rehab. He just wanted to be home. Other members of Palomar faculty, like Anastasia, Angelica, especially. Angelica is here today, Angela, and Teresa. Also, other friends who had visited him during that time. We have Ronald, we have Anthony, we have Viet, we have Jeremy. I don't know if Jeremy is here today. Other members of the poetry team, and Emily. So I just thank you for those times that you visited him. He was always anxious to see people, familiar faces, and wanted to talk with them. He wanted to get back into teaching. That's why he was teaching that when he passed away, teaching for Palomar the fourth semester. This one was made by my sister, and please bear with me. I'm not as good as all the poets in here. So thank you. Joseph, after about 11 months of battling cancer, 17 days before your 50th birthday, in your sleep, you bid goodbye here on earth. But on the other side of life, Jesus had the angelic host said, "Welcome," in the beautiful celestial kingdom of God called heaven, where there is life eternal and joy, no more pain, no more sorrows, no more crying, no more suffering, and no more death. You are now in the royal kingdom of the King of Kings. You are now with Jesus. Before you were born, God knew you. He laid a good destiny for you, a future and a hope, and not to harm you. But the enemy came to try to destroy you, to kill you, to steal your God-given destiny. Using abandonment, rejection, racial discrimination, even suicidal attempt, but you overcome them. Instead, you became like a shining star that influenced many, even myself. You succeeded in your chosen career. You became one of the best faculty in your school. The students liked you. Your co-faculty liked you. You became a good influencer even in the area of entertainment as a poet and a poetry trainer. You had a good career with good financial standing. You own like others could like to own. Nice house, car, sport gears, nice shoes and clothes, techno tools and entertainment system. You had enough. So the enemy was losing his ground on you, till he used cancer to destroy you, to kill you. But praise and thank God, because he was there for you. In your battle against cancer, he revealed himself to you. He revealed his love for you, and you overcome the pain of chemotherapy, blood transfusions, and others by his presence on your side. You gave your life to him and accepted him as your Lord and Savior, the healer of your spirit, soul, and body. As the Bible says, to those who receive Jesus, he gave the power to become children of God. In your pain and suffering, Jesus became real to you. You became personal in your relationship with him. So at the end, you become victorious over death. You gain eternal life in Jesus, the only way, the only truth, and the life. God's word says, What does it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world, but lose his own soul? For there are only two destinies of men when they die. The physical body goes back to the dust, but the forever spirit either goes back to his Creator in heaven or to hell, the lake of fire, where there will be forever suffering with the enemy, Satan. With your brief life, Joseph, you overcome trials of life, but you gained the world. You became successful, and most of all, you made the best decision in life, and that is to have a personal relationship with Jesus. In simple faith, you believed and trusted him, gave your life, and received him as your Lord and Savior. So you did not lose your spirit and soul. You gained eternal life. You became citizen of heaven. Your brief life is a reminder to us that life on earth is brief. We cannot even bring in death what we have worked for, so each one of us had to make the decision to prepare us, to prepare also for life after death. And that is what you did. You are a victor, a winner. Our prayer for us, the living, is that God would teach us to number our days, and that all of us will emulate what you did to make reservation in the celestial city of God, heaven, through receiving Jesus as your Lord and your Savior. Joseph, see you at the supper time in heaven. We love you.
Thank you. At this time, we had planned for an intermission, but we will actually be doing kind of a hybrid intermission / viewing of a video that was prepared, if we can cue that up. So if you need to use the restroom, get some tissues, if you want to give hugs to anyone in the room who is willing to receive hugs, you can do that at this time. We will also be viewing the video at the same time. So this will be the most appropriate time so we don't interrupt the rest of the people that are going to be speaking on the mic. We can start the video at any time, but still feel free to use the restroom, get some water, those things as well. The video will be on this wall over here. We do still want people to be able to enjoy the video, so if we could keep conversation at a minimum or very low, we still want to be able to watch the video. This is just your opportunity to be able to move around. So if we could keep the side conversations down a little bit while we view this, that would be great.
Hi, everyone. Just so a quick introduction, the gentleman on the screen here, his name is Sherwin. If you don't know him, he's one of Joe's contemporaries who came up through the San Diego scene. And he couldn't make it today because he's in Hawaii, but he wanted to send in this video. So if y'all could please give your kind, undivided attention while y'all get yourselves settled. We're good to go.
How do you write a poem for a poet who's passed? Is it supposed to sound like a eulogy or art? Is it supposed to sound like a papyrus sacred prayer and a poem in your back pocket at the same time? Is your tongue supposed to feel like pallbearers carrying a casket to its final resting place, and whenever you repeat this poem, will you be reliving a procession and wonder if this is why they call it rehearsal? Are you even ready to bear this burden? To nail this poem across a page with broken heart wide open and convince yourself to crucify your comfortable? The short answer is, you'll never be ready. But never ask Why the guilt of writing the first line feels like the first fistful of dirt thrown on a coffin, feels like a rushed final draft set in tombstone, feels like a fresh bouquet of goodbyes gutted from a garden of grief. The last time I saw you, Joe, it was my last San Diego Poetry Slam in May 2022. You were excited to be there with your new group of mentees, and it made me reminisce when I was in their shoes. You had your signature look, the one with a sweater over a collared button-up with the sleeves pulled up. I remember the occasional eye contact with a shaking head and near-silent chuckle whenever we heard a dope line, that look we'd done for years. Prefer to remember you this way. That night, we promised to see each other and write together again someday, but cancer had different plans, and I'm stuck here writing for you instead of with you. See, I don't know how to write this poem, but what I do know is that you would have wanted me to be in this unfamiliar territory, questioning myself until I've gotten out of my own way. See, maybe we don't write poems for poets who've passed. Maybe we pen sentences that don't resolve themselves, afraid of punctuations at the end of every line because we're still processing the end of a period. But while I'm struggling to celebrate you and console my sorrow at the same time, I can't shake the sensation of appreciation, so that's how I'll write about you. Not in grief, but in gratitude. So you've taught me how to shovel into my silence and scribble myself out of my safe space, how to sit in my uncomfortable and still love the child behind it, how to go in poet and don't be nice behind the mic. If my voice is a culmination of all my mentors, then you'd be the diaphragm that's pushed me, sometimes way too far, but always in the right direction. I am grateful for the years spent driving 90 miles round trip to hang out and learn from you. I'm grateful for our unspoken rivalry to be the top Filipino slam poet in San Diego, and I'm grateful for the friendship that's taught us what it even means to be a Filipino slam poet in San Diego. Even though you're no longer walking among us, your words will live on in the most cherished of my memories and in every poem I bring to life. Thank you for everything, Joe. I'll see you again, my friend. When my 3 minutes and 10 seconds on this earth are done.
All right, if we can get situated again, we're going to get back into our list. We are running a few minutes behind, so we're going to switch up the format just slightly. So when I call the 3 people who will be up next, please come to this side area, line up at this side area so that we can just quickly make your way to the stage. So when I call the 3 names, all 3 people line up and then go in sequential order. Also, please keep in mind that we do have a time limit. I know it's very difficult to deal with a time limit, especially at an event such as this, but please, so we can get as many people as possible on the mic, try to adhere to 4 minutes, maybe even 3 minutes with a 10-second grace period. All right, so the next 3 people we have coming to the mic, please give it up for Angelica, Ashley, Lanuza, and Preston.
My name is Angelica. I'm a friend, a colleague of Joe. Any friend of Joe is a friend of mine. We worked together. We held writing sessions, workshops with our students. It's going to be such a void in my life. Some people say that finding your soulmate in one lifetime is rare. But I say finding genuine friends is even more uncommon. Joe was one of those friends. I wanted so much to find the right words to honor Joe, to evoke the beauty of his life. Express my pain be the cadence, uncover the artist within. But the irony is that when a poet dies, there are no words. No words to bring him back. No words to make it better. If I speak this, I face his absence. So instead, I escaped my feelings. I ate them. I pushed them down. I watched dumb shit on Netflix. Stayed up way too late, doom scrolling, hoping that I would find a hidden gem on that illuminated screen. Anything to keep me avoidant. Under the cover of night, I hugged his picture, kissed the flowers for his funeral, memorized our last conversation, cried in silence. I buried him under my heart. I tried to change God's mind, but she wouldn't listen. Then I remembered that God is Joe. I remembered that Joe is God's poetry. And now among the stars, where constellations map his face, a poet's journey on the other side, he can rest in this celestial dream. Thank you. I love you, Joe.
Dear Joe, I tried to write a poem, but I know you've read and heard a lot of poems in your life. The crowd in this room can attest to that. And sometimes the problem with poetry, and maybe some in this room can indeed attest to this, is that it lets us hide behind the rhyme and the meter, alliterations, the similes, and the metaphors. Hide who we really are and how we feel, ironically, in one of the most emotionally charged pieces of art. And I think you do that pretty often. But I'd say with Miko, I was able to sometimes be that person behind the poem. And if I'm going to be honest, Joe, how I really feel is I just wish we had more time. I know everybody feels that way too. We only knew each other for a year, yet it felt like a lifetime. And I remember on one of our visits, after you were diagnosed, Miko and I reminded you that it was a year since we all met at LA Get Down. And you broke into tears and told us how much you loved us, and that's what you did so beautifully and what your legacy really entailed. Love. I say that you were a lone old man in his big old house. And usually that makes people think of grumpy or hermit as adjectives, but I don't think you were ever that way. You opened your arms and your heart to the people who walked into your door. For poetry, for politics, you made these worlds collide again and again so you could relive magic through their eyes. And beyond these poems and these performances, I just hope to love as deeply as you did. As much as you loved poetry, as much as you loved teaching, as much as you loved your people, and that you loved lifting all of us up to be our very best. I know that, because despite these last few months, you were still on Zoom cheering me on, or watching my poetry videos and giving my critiques. And I know you really believed in me. On our last conversation before your diagnosis, I was rambling on about how I felt about traveling, and you just smiled at me, and you said something about potential. And then on our last conversation on August 18th, you told me almost word by word the exact same thing. You said, "They see exactly what I see in you, and that's why you're there." You had so much faith in me, and when you were alive, I tried living up to that. And from here, I'll keep on trying. Actually, I did write a poem, of course. But I wrote it for my workshop because I started school the week after you had passed away, and you were the only thing on my mind. And on our last day of class, we shared this poem, and a black butterfly suddenly flew into the room. It came out from a fireplace, and all the windows were shut. And I was saying my poem when I explained it, and the butterfly just flew around until I finished, and then it was able to go out the window. So I guess even now you're still trying to show up and support. Joe, you've given me so much to look up to and to live by. Regardless of how long or short our time together was, I'm grateful that we even crossed paths, that we went to slams, got locked out of your garage, debated about social media until 2 a.m, ate mediocre San Marcos sushi, had Zoom workshops while I was traveling or driving, talked about our families over old fashions, and watched hours and hours and hours. We watched hours, like, 5, 7 hours of poetry the last time I visited him. And so I'm just grateful that you were my mentor. And most importantly, that you are my friend. I love you. Rest easy.
One thing I always appreciated about going after Joe was that we were the same height. We used to look at the list. It was like me, Rudy, Joe. I was like, cool. I was on the 2013 Slam team with Joe. And he doesn't remember, he probably doesn't even remember this, but I don't get on the team without a humble move by him. I grew up with Elevated, and you had to place in the top 3 in order to get to the Grand Slam to compete for a spot on the team. And he already had placed in the top 3 in a previous slam, and we're in the final round of a slam, and I hadn't placed in any of the slams, but I was close. And he was in the middle of his poem, and he dropped a line. And usually a poet will drop the line, find the line, and then continue to go. But because he knew he was already in the Grand Slam, he just walked off. That was the first gift he ever gave me. Because if he doesn't walk off, I don't place 3rd, I don't get into the Grand Slam, and I don't get on the team. And so Joe and Ant Black were the 2 poets who I said the most. My greatest compliment I can give a poet is I wish I wrote that line. Because they were educators and poets, and I'm an educator and a poet. And our 2013 team was literally the team of educators. Myself, Carla, Viet, Ant, Joe. We were the shortest team in the history of... We were the shortest team ever. It was all of us and Ant. Like, Ant was just in the middle, like 5'10", 5'11", just a bunch of 5 foot and 5'6" and under. Like, I was the second tallest. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But I love Joe, and I tried to write something for him, but I haven't written poetry in years, and it felt forced. So I decided to do a piece that I knew he loved. And so, we're one. Extensions of each other, incomplete when we're apart. Together, dynamic in execution, dripping excellence on papyrus, formulating verbal constructs, so I must construct an ode to a marriage born BC, preordained to relieve my pain. 2 tears, 2 words, no more. I now know more about the depths of my lyrical capabilities, 1 in 50 states for assaulting proper English. I don't do periods and I don't do commas, but my pen and I won't allow separation, period. And a sentence from her to me may make you pause, as if you saw a comma, but it wasn't there. All that's there is a kid who has finally found companionship with a utensil that was there from the beginning, only no one wanted to introduce us. Not until higher learning became our only learning did such an introduction commence. And what commenced was imperfection to the naked eye, as sentences lost all the rules old Englishmen created to hinder the different. So I create word contradictions that make old Englishmen roll in their graves and make my Angelou smile. From my essays now reek of fragmented phrases that only make sense to people who burn incense or an outfit in dashikis with their hair in an afro. So maybe that is why my pen and I were not introduced. Maybe he didn't think I'd be receptive to his calling, that I didn't look like a poet. But poets destroy stereotypes as they are stereotyped, for all these stereotypes are the types that ban us from the stereo. For we are the true lyricist. Daydreaming word combinations to make rappers offer diamonds for the right to my ghost. Daydreaming word combinations to make rappers offer diamonds for the right to my ghost. Daydreaming word combinations to make rappers offer diamonds for the right to my ghost. Is that the simple fact is that my last line was so refined that you have to read another time just so you can get it. So I'm leaning some of my time to go back and reread that rhyme, then come back with your compliments. For the average human's confusion is an accomplishment. For my pen is my perfect compliment. But I'm still receptive to your compliments. As my divorce papers were turned in for the right to be single, I initiated the conversation as me and my pen started to mingle. She asked if I prefer short over long. I responded with Jesus wept, and she wept on the notepad I kept. And ever since we've taken baby steps as she's directed my words into a voice I can call my own, calling my own vocab, rewrite heavenly songs. For my prior occupation was all wrong. Because for me, I and she, we're meant to be. We're one together, my pen and me.
Thank you, poets. The next three people, please come to the wings. We have Chris Wilson, Carla Cordero, and Danielle Hastings. And please remember the time limit. Thank you.
Right height, but I might lower it anyway. I was also one of those people who met Joe in Minnesota, and he's like, I'm from San Diego. I was like, what are you doing here? But I thought it was dope that he came just to support. And from that conversation in Minnesota, we built like a brother-to-brother relationship. First, I want to give love to Mama. We love Joe. Me and Joe connected on so many levels. Like Tasha said, like he's that guy who's way older than her, and I will say I was that guy that was older than him. Like Star Wars, Ahsoka Tano watch, the Proletariat, Working Families Party. I got nerd socks on because I'm a nerd. And I guess that's where me and Joe connected, because like we're both men of color. We were like self-professed nerds. And it was cool. But mostly Joe made me feel good about myself, because until the day he died, he called me coach, because I was his first coach. And he's the only person who I ever coached who continued to call me coach beyond the slam team. And that meant something to me, because it said that I made an impact in a way that I intended to. I brought something out in Joe that he didn't see for himself. And that's the role of a coach, to get you to go farther, harder, faster, longer than you see yourself going. And Joe didn't understand that process when I first coached him, so he would push back. And that's the role of the person being coached, to say I've done enough, to say I've gone as far as I can. And I would always say, Joe, you got more. And he did. And I remember the first time where Joe stepped into his power on that stage behind that mic. And me and Rudy was talking about this at his memorial service. Like, he did this poem, and it was the night, it was a tournament, and it was the night after he had blown a poem. And he did this poem so well, like, we literally ran to the stage, screaming and fucking yelling. And anybody there was like, why is San Diego losing their shit? And it was because Joe stepped into Joe's power. And Joe was never the same after that night. Joe believed in Joe. Joe knew Joe. And we believed in Joe too. And in this poem, I'm gonna do this poem. And I have never, ever recited anybody else's poem. So I'm gonna do this poem for Joe, because I feel like Joe is here and Joe would understand why I'm doing this. But this poem let us know that Joe saw himself as part of the San Diego team, the San Diego scene, the San Diego family. because there's a line in his poem that I don't even think today's scene even knows. Like when somebody says punch you in the throat, that's a very San Diego thing. That's some San Diego shit. People don't know. But get punched in your throat, you'll know. If we rape and murder and call that democracy, why don't we have a slave-holding institution and call it public education? Yeah, I'm that old. If a man is defined by their dreams, what does it mean when graduates sell 2/5 of their humanity to the cashier and accounts payable, leaving 3/5 of a person? See, I've seen students shackled by credit hours, careers hung festering by academic calendar. These schools get fatter when they build empty classrooms off the over $1 billion in debt and $25,000 per student per year in loans. We sacrifice free thought for profit. 40 acres and a mule become an illusory reparation as career counseling. There's an irony. Our teaching degrees call us master. See, I'm a political science professor, but I'm also an invisible man behind enemy lines running underground ideas in dimly lit and cramped spaces. There is no space for food for thought. So teaching becomes an uphill battle, mass-produced uselessness. I want to give fighting skills. I want to black market knowledge and hand it out like weapons. Nat Turner these students into intellectual insurrections. Move us as blood brothers and sisters. Cut us and we drip the First Amendment veins, eager for transfusion in deadened pop culture. No wonder why we are fascinated with vampires. Our society is defined by our anemia. When the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, turns into a lottery ticket bought with the last dollar, we lose faith in education. So I find God within the creases of my degrees and speak from the pulpit with so much fire in my tongue that students raise hands to the heaven like they're lifting spirits from the dead. Dear school districts, administrators, and college presidents, slavery is no longer legal in the world. Yet currently we have more slaves than we've ever had in history. We become a fast food conveyor belt of Wikipedia knowledge, meaning we write papers, but we say absolutely nothing. Empty calorie memorization, our students become numbers. Over 7 billion served, and I'm no longer hungry. So ask me. Ask me if I'm trying to advance a liberal agenda. And I will tell you, I'm just trying to get students to think for themselves. Ask me if I do it for the money, and I will show you my paycheck. Then punch you in your throat. Ask me why I do this, and I will say, I just want to teach. See, maybe I'm not built for the business of education, but since when did it become a business? When University of Phoenix proudly proclaims that they're not in it for that expand your mind bullshit,